Have you ever seen a teacher get fired on the spot? I was in AP history when everything went sideways. Mr. Hartley had been our substitute for 3 days, and he'd been getting progressively more unhinged, ranting about his military service, how our generation was soft, how his grandfather's belt taught him more than any textbook. That Thursday, Liam raised his hand. Mr. Hartley, can we review the Reconstruction era for the AP exam? The exam? Mr. Hartley stood up slowly. You think some test created by liberal academics matters? The room went silent. Sir, I just want to be prepared. Prepared? He walked to Liam's desk. Let me prepare you for reality. He grabbed Liam's textbook. This propaganda tells you the Civil War was about slavery. My ancestors fought for states' rights. Then he started ripping pages out one by one. That's my property. Liam jumped up. Bro, that book cost me $180. Sit down before I show you real consequences. Mr. Hartley stepped closer, making Liam step back. Sarah pulled out her phone to record. Mr. Hartley knocked it from her hand. Crack. The screen shattered completely. That's a $1,000 phone, Sarah screamed. Good. Maybe now you'll pay attention. He walked to the front and pulled down the American flag, draping it over his shoulders like a cape. I served 3 tours for this flag, and I come back to find it in a classroom full of ungrateful brats who won't even stand for the pledge. Jake stood up. You can't wear the flag like that. It's disrespectful. I earned this flag, boy. What have you done? He walked to the door, locked it from inside, and pocketed the keys. Nobody's leaving. We're having a real lesson about what this country used to be. My heart started racing. He pulled out his desk lighter. You know what my drill sergeant did when someone complained? Made us run until someone passed out? That builds character. Courtney's voice shook. I need to check my blood sugar. I'm diabetic. Another weakness. Another excuse. He walked to her desk and grabbed her bag. Let me guess. Can't survive without your medication? It's a medical condition, Katie protested. In combat, you push through or die. Natural selection. He pulled out Courtney's insulin pen. Connor, Mike, and Tyler, our football players, stood up. Give it back. Oh, the heroes. You think you're tough? You play a game. I've killed people with my bare hands. He held the lighter to the flag on his shoulders. It caught instantly. The classroom erupted. Kids screaming, jumping over desks. The smoke alarm shrieked. Sprinklers activated, drenching everyone. Through the chaos, Mr. Hartley held Courtney's insulin above his head. This is what's wrong with you. Dependent on drugs. Weak. Courtney was sobbing. I'll go into shock. I could die. Then you should have been born stronger. Connor, Mike, and Tyler rushed him. He grabbed a desk leg, somehow already broken off, and swung it like a bat. Crack. It caught Connor's face directly. He dropped, blood pouring from his nose and cheek. Mike and Tyler tried to grab him, but his combat training showed. Mike went flying into a desk. Tyler got an elbow to the stomach. Courtney was on her hands and knees, searching for her insulin in the water, her hands shaking. Somebody help! Jake pounded on the door. Mr. Hartley picked up the insulin pen, walked to the window, 3rd floor, and opened it. You want this? Prove you deserve to survive. He threw it out. We heard it shatter below. Natural selection, he screamed. The weak deserve to... Boom! The door exploded inward. The principal and maintenance had used a crowbar. Security rushed in, wrestling Mr. Hartley down. You're raising a generation of victims. You're fired, the principal said, shaking with rage. You're done. Paramedics rushed to Connor, unconscious, face swelling, then to Courtney, going into diabetic shock, sweating, shaking. We need insulin now, the paramedic shouted. They took Connor on a stretcher, face unrecognizable. Courtney went next, barely conscious, paramedics pumping emergency glucose just to stabilize her. Mr. Hartley was arrested. Assault, destruction of property, reckless endangerment, false imprisonment. 2 weeks later, we learned the truth. Connor needed 3 surgeries to rebuild his cheekbone. Football scholarship to state? Gone. Courtney now has permanent kidney damage. And Mr. Hartley? He made bail. His military buddies hired him a lawyer. He was already teaching at a private military academy 2 towns over. They called it a misunderstanding, said he was a war hero who deserved a second chance. That's when I knew getting fired wasn't enough. We had to destroy him. That night, I couldn't sleep at all. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Connor's face exploding with blood when that desk leg hit him. I kept hearing Courtney's screams when she couldn't find her insulin in all that water on the floor. My hands wouldn't stop shaking. Around 2 a.m., I grabbed my phone and started texting everyone who was in that classroom. We need to meet tomorrow, I typed. Not at the school, though. Too many people watching us there. Sarah replied first, then Liam, then Katie. By 3 a.m., we had 12 people saying yes. Friday morning, I walked through the main doors and everything felt wrong. Kids were moving different, walking faster between classes. Teachers stood in their doorways watching the halls like guards. Everyone kept looking over their shoulders. Nobody wanted to be trapped in a room again. During lunch, we met in the parking lot by Sarah's car. 15 of us showed up, more than I expected. Liam had a black eye I hadn't noticed yesterday from when he tried to help Connor. Katie's hands had bandages from glass cuts when the sprinklers made everyone slip. We all just stood there for a minute, nobody knowing how to start. Then Jake said what we were all thinking. That psycho is still out there teaching other kids. Sarah pulled out her phone and started a group chat right there. She named it Witnesses. We need to get organized, she said. Who can get medical records from their parents? Katie raised her hand. Who can document everything that happened? I volunteered for that. Liam said he'd track down the kids who were absent that day. Make sure they knew what happened. We spent 20 minutes assigning jobs to everyone. Jake would research the legal stuff. Tyler would talk to Connor's family. Mike would check on Courtney. We were done being victims. We were going to fight back. Right as we got back inside, my phone buzzed with an email from the school. I opened it and my blood started boiling. They called it an unfortunate incident currently under review. They said counselors were available for anyone experiencing difficulty. They reminded us that spreading unverified information could have serious consequences. They were already trying to bury it. Sarah and I decided to visit Courtney after school. The hospital smell hit me as soon as we walked in. We found her room on the 3rd floor. She was hooked up to these huge machines doing her blood cleaning for her. Dialysis, the nurse said when she saw us staring. 3 times a week now. Courtney looked so small in that bed. Her mom was holding her hand, eyes red from crying. We stayed for 10 minutes before Courtney fell asleep from the medicine. Walking back to the elevator, we heard crying from another room. Connor's mom was in the hallway with a doctor. He needs at least 2 more surgeries, the doctor was saying. The bone fragments could cause permanent nerve damage if we don't remove them all. His mom just kept shaking her head, saying this can't be happening over and over. That night, my parents saw the group chat on my phone. Mom sat me down at the kitchen table. You need to stay out of this, she said. Let the police handle it. Let the lawyers handle it. Dad kept talking about college applications, about how getting involved in something like this could hurt my future. How can you say that? I asked them. Courtney might need dialysis forever. Connor lost his scholarship. My future? What about their futures? They grounded me, but I didn't care. Monday morning came and Jake found me before first period. His older brother went to Preston Military Academy last year. He made some calls. It's true, Jake said. Hartley started teaching there last Monday. They're calling him a decorated veteran bringing discipline to young men. The rage that hit me wasn't hot like before. It was cold, focused. I knew exactly what we had to do. During lunch, we met in the library. Sarah had been thinking the same thing I was. The school won't help us, she said. The police already let him out on bail. We need to go bigger. Katie mentioned her cousin worked at the newspaper. Michelle something? Lawson, Katie said. Michelle Lawson. She covers education stories. Maybe she'd listen to us. We agreed to reach out. Katie texted her cousin during study hall. Tuesday afternoon, 5 of us drove downtown to this coffee shop Michelle picked. She was younger than I expected, maybe late 20s. She had a recorder and a notebook. She listened to our whole story without interrupting once. When we finished, she looked at us for a long moment. Do you have any proof beyond your testimonies? She asked. We showed her photos of Connor's face, the medical reports Katie got from her mom, Sarah's broken phone receipt. She took notes on everything. I'll need to verify all this, she said. But if it's true, people need to know. Wednesday started normal until 2nd period. The secretary came on the loudspeaker calling Sarah to the office. Then me during 3rd period, then Liam, then Katie. One by one, they pulled us all out. A woman in a suit was waiting in the conference room. Sloan Perkins, District Risk Management, her card said. She had this fake concerned smile. I understand you've been through something difficult, she said. We want to ensure you're getting proper support through appropriate channels. Then her voice changed. However, spreading unverified allegations could expose you and your families to legal action. The school district cannot be held responsible for statements made without proper verification. She kept using words like alleged and purported and claims. Like we were making it up. Like Connor's face wasn't held together with metal plates. Like Courtney wasn't getting her blood cleaned by a machine 3 times a week. Have you contacted any media outlets? She asked. We need to know so we can provide accurate information. I said nothing. She handed me a paper. This details the proper channels for reporting concerns. Please use them instead of outside parties who might not understand the full context. When I got home, I threw the paper in the trash. Sarah's dad called me that night and said he'd set up a meeting with a lawyer friend downtown. The next morning, we drove to this old brick building where Malcolm Green had his office on the 3rd floor. He was younger than I expected, maybe 35, with stacks of papers everywhere and a whiteboard covered in case notes. Sarah's dad explained everything while Malcolm took notes on a yellow pad. When we finished, Malcolm leaned back in his chair and rubbed his eyes. He told us civil cases take months, sometimes years, not the quick justice we wanted. The system moves slow on purpose, he said, to give both sides time to build their cases. Even with clear evidence like Connor's medical records and Courtney's kidney damage, we were looking at depositions, discovery phases, motions, counter-motions. My stomach sank hearing him explain how Hartley's lawyer would drag everything out, question every witness, challenge every piece of evidence. Thursday night came exactly 1 week after the attack, and we all met at Katie's house. Her mom had this huge dining table where we spread everything out. Liam had collected the torn textbook pages from the classroom floor after the paramedics left. Katie printed Connor's hospital photos from his mom's phone, his face so swollen you couldn't recognize him. Sarah had screenshots of the security footage before the school deleted it. We organized everything into folders, one for medical evidence, one for property damage, one for witness statements. Katie's mom showed us how to make an index, number each document, create a timeline. My hands shook looking at the insulin pen receipt Courtney's mom gave us, $300 for something Hartley threw out a window. We worked until 2 in the morning, making copies of everything, scanning documents, backing up files to 3 different flash drives. Friday morning, I was half asleep in chemistry when my phone buzzed. Michelle Lawson calling. I stepped into the hallway and she told me she'd confirmed Hartley's employment at Preston Military Academy through 2 separate sources. One was a parent whose son attended. The other was someone in their admin office who wouldn't give their name. She was running a story this weekend about concerning hiring practices at private schools, but wouldn't mention us by name yet. Saturday afternoon, the article went live on the newspaper's website. Within an hour, the comment section exploded. Half the people called us spoiled brats making up stories about a war hero. The other half thanked us for speaking up, sharing their own stories about aggressive teachers. Someone tracked down my Instagram through Sarah's tagged photos and started sending messages. "You're disrespecting everyone who served," one said. Another called me ungrateful trash who didn't deserve to live in America. I made my account private, but screenshots were already spreading. Sunday morning, Jake texted the group chat that his parents were making him quit. They said it was getting too dangerous, that we were making ourselves targets. He felt terrible, but his dad threatened to take away his car and phone if he didn't stop. 3 other kids dropped out too, scared of the online harassment getting worse. We went from 15 witnesses to 8. The ones who stayed were the ones who'd seen the worst parts. Liam, whose book got destroyed. Sarah, whose phone got smashed. Katie, who watched Courtney almost die. Monday started bad and got worse. Courtney's mom called during lunch, crying. The kidney specialist ran more tests over the weekend. The damage was permanent. Courtney would need dialysis or medication for the rest of her life because one substitute teacher decided insulin made her weak. Her mom kept saying she was only 17. How could this happen to a 17-year-old? I sat in the bathroom stall trying not to scream. That afternoon, we decided to sign up for public comment at the next school board meeting in 2 weeks. Liam started working on a presentation with our timeline and evidence. I practiced what I wanted to say, writing and rewriting my statement. We knew we'd only get 3 minutes each, so every word mattered. Tuesday morning during announcements, Sloan Perkins came on the loudspeaker. Any protests or demonstrations on the school property would result in immediate suspension, she said. The district had a zero-tolerance policy for disrupting the educational environment. Everyone in class turned to look at me. The message was clear. Shut up or lose your future. We met after school at the coffee shop downtown. If we couldn't protest at the school, we'd do it somewhere else. Katie's mom had already started researching permit requirements. Wednesday, she drove us to City Hall where we filled out the application for a rally at the town square. The clerk asked what organization we represented, and Katie's mom said concerned parents and students. Other parents had started joining our group, angry that the district cared more about avoiding lawsuits than protecting kids. The permit cost $50 and Katie's mom paid it without hesitating. Thursday, Malcolm called with an update. He'd filed a Freedom of Information Act request for Hartley's employment records from the district. They responded that substitute teachers weren't regular employees, so those records didn't exist or weren't subject to FOIA. The loophole made me want to punch something. How could someone work in schools for months but not count as an employee when it mattered? Malcolm said this was typical. Districts protecting themselves with technicalities while kids suffered. He was already preparing an appeal, but warned it could take weeks. Meanwhile, Hartley was still teaching at Preston, still in a classroom with kids, still getting a paycheck while Connor couldn't eat solid food, and Courtney needed machines to clean her blood. Thursday afternoon, Malcolm called us back to his office where he spread out folders across his conference table. He explained we had 3 main paths for lawsuits and started listing numbers that made my stomach drop. A case against the district would cost at least $15,000 just to start. Going after Hartley personally meant tracking him down for service, which added more fees, and suing Preston Academy would mean fighting their team of lawyers who'd drag it out for years. He could do some preliminary work pro bono, but real litigation meant real money, and none of us had that kind of cash. My parents had already spent hundreds on therapy sessions insurance wouldn't cover, and Connor's family was drowning in medical bills even with the district's partial coverage. Friday morning brought more bad news when Michelle texted our group chat with a screenshot of a legal letter. Preston Academy's lawyer had sent her a cease and desist demanding she stop her defamatory reporting about their hiring practices. Michelle wasn't scared though. She forwarded it straight to her paper's legal team and started working on her next article about schools using legal threats to silence journalists. She said the letter just proved Preston knew they'd screwed up and were trying to cover their tracks. Saturday, I woke up to a Facebook message from someone named Blake Burgess, who said he'd served with Hartley in Afghanistan and had been following our story online. He wanted to meet in person, said there were things about Hartley's military service people needed to know. Sarah and Katie came with me to meet him at a diner downtown where Blake, still wearing his army jacket, ordered coffee, and started talking without any small talk. He told us about 2 separate incidents overseas where Hartley lost control, once shoving a private into a wall hard enough to leave bruises, and another time throwing a metal tray at someone during an argument in the mess hall. The second incident got him written up, but the paperwork disappeared when their captain decided to handle it internally. Blake gave us the name of the private who got shoved, said the guy might still have photos of the bruises if we could track him down. We spent Sunday calling veterans organizations trying to find this guy, while also following another lead Liam had discovered. He'd found a Reddit post from 8 months ago, where someone mentioned a scary substitute at their school who sounded exactly like Hartley, based on the military rants and aggressive behavior. The username led us to a girl named Ashley from a district 40 miles away who was terrified to talk at first. She finally agreed to a video call where she confirmed Hartley had subbed for her chemistry class last year and got aggressive when a student questioned his explanation of atomic theory. He'd slammed a textbook on the desk so hard it knocked over equipment, but the school just didn't invite him back rather than filing any formal complaint. Monday morning started with Sarah's phone buzzing during first period. Someone had sent her an anonymous email with a video attachment from 2 months before our incident showing Hartley in a different classroom, shoving a desk toward a student who'd been talking during his lecture. The quality was grainy and we couldn't verify which school it was from, but the way he moved, that same aggressive lean forward when he got mad, was unmistakably him. Requested Reds is on Spotify now. Check out link in the description or comments. Michelle's tech person spent Monday afternoon analyzing the video metadata and confirmed it hadn't been edited or manipulated. The timestamp showed it was recorded in early September at 2:47 p.m., which meant it happened during school hours somewhere in our state. Michelle started preparing another story about the pattern of behavior, how multiple incidents across different schools showed this wasn't an isolated breakdown, but an ongoing problem the system kept ignoring. Tuesday morning, our new history substitute, Mrs. Britton, kept making pointed comments about maintaining professional boundaries and appropriate classroom management techniques. Every time she mentioned how teachers should never touch students or their property, everyone would glance at me and the others who'd been there. It felt like the administration was using her to send a message about not causing more trouble, turning our trauma into a teaching moment for other staff. Wednesday started bad when Courtney's blood sugar crashed during lunch and she collapsed in the cafeteria. The nurse barely got her stabilized with emergency glucose gel while we watched her shake and sweat just like that day with Hartley. Her monitor had been beeping warnings, but she'd been ignoring them because the sound triggered panic attacks now. Watching her suffer again, knowing this was her life forever because one man decided she was weak, made my hands shake with rage. We couldn't give up because Hartley was still out there, still in a classroom full of kids at Preston, still able to hurt someone else the way he'd hurt Courtney and Connor. That night, everything exploded at home when my parents sat me down after dinner. Mom had printed out screenshots of the threatening messages I'd been getting. Dad had a list of every news article mentioning my name, and they said if I didn't stop immediately, they'd take away my phone, my laptop, and ground me indefinitely. They said I was putting our whole family at risk, that Dad could lose his job if his company thought we were troublemakers, that my little brother was getting bullied at middle school because of my crusade. The betrayal cut deeper than any online threat because these were the people who were supposed to support me, who taught me to stand up for what's right, and now they wanted me to shut up and let Hartley keep teaching just to keep things comfortable for them. Thursday morning, I walked into school feeling completely alone after my parents basically sided with the system over their own kid. The hallways felt different now with everyone watching me and whispering about the news stories. During lunch, Sarah showed me a message from the school office saying the psychologist Amy Quick wanted to meet with our whole group for counseling. Jake immediately said it was probably a trap to get us to say something they could use against us. Katie thought the school was just trying to cover themselves legally by offering help they knew we wouldn't take. But I was so tired from not sleeping and fighting with my parents that I just wanted someone to listen who wasn't trying to shut us up. We agreed to at least hear what she had to say and filed into her office after school. Amy didn't sit behind her desk, but pulled her chair into our circle, which already felt different from other adults. She started by teaching us this breathing thing where you count to 4 inhaling and 6 exhaling, which actually helped my racing heart slow down. Then she explained how our brains were stuck in fight mode after what happened, and that's why we kept having nightmares and panic attacks. She showed us how to press our feet into the floor and name 5 things we could see to stop the flashbacks. Courtney started crying when Amy talked about how trauma changes your body forever, and Amy just handed her tissues without making a big deal. She gave us each a card with her personal cell number and said we could text anytime, even at 3 in the morning if we were having a bad night. Walking out, I realized she was the first adult who actually seemed to care about us more than protecting the school. Friday morning, Malcolm called me before school to say he was filing the official notice of claim against the district, which was the first legal step toward a lawsuit. By lunch, the district had already called him back, offering to meet about a settlement, which meant they were scared of going to court. We spent all weekend at Sarah's house arguing about whether to take whatever money they offered. Courtney's medical bills were already over $50,000, and her family didn't have good insurance. Connor's surgeries had cost even more, and his parents were talking about taking out a second mortgage on their house. But Malcolm warned us that any settlement would probably include us signing papers saying we couldn't talk about what happened anymore. We voted Sunday night and decided stopping Hartley from hurting other kids were more important than getting money for ourselves. Monday during our group meeting, someone suggested we should just leak all the videos we had, even the ones we couldn't verify were real. They said the pressure would force Preston to fire him faster, but Malcolm explained on speakerphone that releasing unverified evidence could get us sued for defamation. He reminded us that Hartley had military friends with money for lawyers, and we needed to stay smart, not desperate. We agreed to keep following the legal path even though it felt like watching him teach other kids while we waited for courts to move. Tuesday morning, Michelle called to say her second story was going live with the verified video Blake had helped us get from the soldier who served with Hartley. Within an hour, my phone was blowing up with notifications as people shared the article everywhere. The comments section turned into a war zone with some people calling us ungrateful brats who didn't respect veterans. But then other veterans started commenting that wearing the uniform doesn't give you the right to hurt kids. Blake himself posted a long comment about how real warriors protect the innocent, and Hartley had dishonored his service. By Tuesday night, Preston Academy had released their official statement calling Hartley a distinguished veteran who deserved second chances and rehabilitation, not persecution. Reading their PR spin about how he was getting counseling for his PTSD made me so mad I threw my phone across my room. Wednesday night, Katie's mom drove us to Preston's open house where they were recruiting new families for next semester. We wore nice clothes and pretended to be interested in their military discipline program while secretly recording everything on our phones. The admissions director bragged about how they didn't waste time on extensive background checks because they trusted veterans. When someone asked about safety protocols, he laughed and said their students weren't soft like public school kids who complained about everything. Katie asked specifically about the news stories, and he said the media always exaggerated, and they stood behind their staff 100%. We documented how they had no real policies for protecting students and actively dismissed concerns about teacher violence as weakness. Malcolm called us Thursday morning after reviewing our recordings and warned us we were getting close to the legal line of harassment. He said Preston's lawyers could argue we were entrapping them or interfering with their business if we kept showing up. We agreed to pull back from any direct contact with Preston and focus on legal pressure through proper channels instead. But it was hard to stop when we knew Hartley was in a classroom right now, maybe throwing another kid's insulin out a window. Saturday morning, we held our rally at the town square with Malcolm making sure we had all the right permits, so no one could shut us down. About 200 people showed up, including 3 local news crews and reporters from papers in nearby cities. Parents took turns at the microphone talking about school safety, while we stood behind them holding huge printed copies of Courtney's and Connor's medical bills. One mom started crying when she talked about how her son was now scared to raise his hand in class after hearing what happened to Liam. We heard the shouting from across the square. About 30 people marched toward us carrying signs that said, "Support our veterans," and "Respect those who served," and wearing matching red shirts. They set up on the opposite corner and started chanting about how we were ungrateful kids who didn't understand sacrifice. The news cameras swung between our groups, eating up the conflict. That's when Blake Burgess did something nobody expected. He walked away from the counter-protesters, still wearing his army dress uniform with all his medals, and crossed the square to stand with us. The chanting stopped. Everyone just stared as this decorated soldier picked up one of our signs showing Connor's medical bills. The cameras went crazy. Blake stood next to Courtney's wheelchair without saying anything, just being there in his uniform on our side. Courtney grabbed the microphone even though her mom tried to stop her. Her voice came out weak but clear as she described waking up at 3 a.m. to check her blood sugar, the 7 pills she takes every morning, the dialysis appointments 3 times a week. She held up the plastic bag of medical supplies she carries everywhere now. The whole square went quiet. She explained how she can't play soccer anymore because her kidneys can't handle the stress, how she missed her cousin's wedding because she was in the hospital, how her little sister cries when she sees the dialysis needles. A woman in the counter-protest group started crying and walked away. More followed her. By the time Courtney finished, half their group had left and our side had doubled. Sunday night, Michelle texted our group chat that someone from Preston Academy had reached out anonymously. The email described Hartley making cadets do push-ups in the mud until they threw up, throwing a kid's backpack in the pond because he forgot to salute, screaming at a 13-year-old until the kid wet himself. The person was scared to give their name, but included dates and details Michelle could verify. Monday morning, Michelle called me excited because she'd gotten Preston's employment files through some contact at the state education department. The documents showed they never called his references, never verified his military discharge status, never even Googled his name, which would have shown a complaint from his last school. She had proof they hired him without doing basic checks that even McDonald's does for fry cooks. That afternoon, we got called to the principal's office where Sloane Perkins sat with a stack of papers. She said our campaign was disrupting the educational environment, and if we didn't stop organizing during school hours, she'd ban us from all extracurriculars, including Sarah's debate team and Katie's orchestra. We recorded the whole meeting on our phones. Malcolm sent the district a letter that night about First Amendment rights, and how their threat was illegal retaliation. Tuesday started normal until dinner when my chest got tight and I couldn't breathe right. My vision went fuzzy and I felt like I was dying. I woke up on my bathroom floor gasping and covered in sweat, my mom standing over me terrified. She wanted to call 911, but I remembered what Amy taught us about panic attacks. I called Amy's emergency number and she answered on the second ring. She talked me through breathing exercises, counting backwards from 100, naming 5 things I could see, 4 I could touch, 3 I could hear. 20 minutes later, I could breathe normal again, but I felt exhausted and embarrassed. She told me trauma does this sometimes and it wasn't weakness. Wednesday after school, I went to watch football practice because Connor said he was trying to play again. He suited up and ran warm-ups fine, but when they started contact drills, everything changed. The first hit near his face made him freeze. The second time someone's shoulder pad got close to his cheek, he dropped to his knees shaking. Coach tried to encourage him, but Connor took off his helmet and walked off the field. We all knew he wasn't coming back. His dad punched the fence so hard his knuckles bled. That night, Connor posted on Instagram that his football career was over, thanking everyone for support but saying his face couldn't take hits anymore. The post got thousands of comments, including nasty ones from Preston Academy supporters calling him weak. Thursday. Malcolm sent Preston's board a detailed letter with evidence of Hartley's pattern of violence and documentation of their liability if he hurt a cadet. Their lawyer responded with legal jargon basically saying they were reviewing personnel decisions through appropriate channels, which meant they were stalling. Malcolm said this was good because it showed they were worried. Friday morning, Michelle's biggest story yet went live with the anonymous video Blake's military contact had provided, showing Hartley in Afghanistan shoving a local interpreter who wouldn't translate his insults. The headline, Pattern of Violence, How Schools Enable Dangerous Teachers, included everything from our classroom attack to Preston's hiring practices to the new allegations from their own staff. My phone exploded with notifications as the story went viral. News vans showed up at Preston Academy, but they locked the gates and called the cops on reporters. Saturday, my phone started ringing with blocked numbers that Katie traced to Preston board members' offices. Sunday, Michelle heard from 3 different sources that major Preston Academy donors were demanding answers. 2 board members had called an emergency meeting for Monday morning about what they called the situation in internal emails someone leaked to us. Monday morning, my phone buzzed with 17 messages in the group chat before I even got out of bed. Sarah had sent a screenshot from Preston Academy's website showing their announcement that went live at 6 a.m. The statement said Hartley was on administrative leave pending review of personnel matters, which was the most corporate way possible to avoid saying he was in trouble. I jumped up and ran downstairs where my mom was already watching the local news covering the story. The reporter stood outside Preston's locked gates reading their statement while mentioning our allegations, which made my blood boil since we had proof. At the school, everyone was talking about it, but Principal Sloan pulled me and Sarah into her office during first period. She told us the district appreciated our concerns being addressed, but warned us not to disrupt classes with celebrations since this was still an ongoing matter. Sarah recorded the whole conversation on her phone hidden in her pocket. That afternoon, I was eating lunch when Katie showed me her phone screen where Hartley had posted a 10-minute video rant on his personal Facebook page. His face was red and sweaty as he called us entitled brats destroying America with cancel culture, and said we were soft children who couldn't handle discipline. He claimed he was a decorated veteran being persecuted by liberal snowflakes who didn't understand sacrifice. The video already had 300 comments split between people calling him a hero and others saying he should be in jail. We all started screenshotting everything, including the timestamps and comments, before it disappeared. Sure enough, an hour later, the video was gone. But we had saved everything, including the part where he said Courtney deserved what happened for being weak. Michelle texted me that she had also captured it and was preparing another story about his lack of remorse. That night, I was doing homework when my phone started blowing up with notifications from numbers I didn't recognize. Someone had posted my full name and home address on a military support forum calling me the ringleader trying to destroy a patriot. The messages ranged from calling me ungrateful to saying they knew where I lived and would teach me respect. My hands shook as I showed my parents, who immediately called the police. Sarah texted that the same thing was happening to her with her address posted on 3 different sites. The officer who came to our house said to document everything, but admitted there wasn't much they could do about online threats unless someone showed up physically. Malcolm called that night and walked us through filing formal police reports with case numbers for documentation. He said this harassment proved Hartley's supporters were dangerous and would help our civil case. Tuesday, we stayed home from the school on Malcolm's advice while he worked with a tech expert to trace who posted our information. My mom took time off work to stay with me while Dad installed new locks and a doorbell camera. Sarah's family was doing the same thing with her dad sleeping in the living room with a baseball bat. Wednesday, we went back to the school with the principal assigning us a security escort between classes, which made everyone stare. The doxing had made local news with Michelle's story, highlighting how victims of violence often face retaliation for speaking up. Thursday arrived with the school board meeting that had been moved to the high school auditorium because so many people wanted to attend. News vans lined the parking lot and protesters held signs both supporting and condemning Hartley outside. Inside the auditorium was packed with parents, students, reporters, and community members, filling every seat and standing along the walls. When my name got called for public comment, my legs felt weak walking to the podium. My hands shook holding the papers, but my voice stayed steady as I read every line of Courtney's medical bills out loud. $23,000 for the emergency room visit, $8,000 for kidney function tests, $1,200 per month for new medications, $3,500 for each dialysis session when her kidneys acted up. The room went completely silent except for someone crying in the back row. I explained how one man's violence created lifetime medical debt for a 17-year-old girl who just wanted to check her blood sugar. I held up the stack of bills that was 3 inches thick and said this was only 5 months' worth. When I sat down, the board members looked uncomfortable shifting in their seats. After 2 hours of public comments, the board voted unanimously to launch an independent investigation into the hiring and supervision of substitute teachers. They also established an emergency medical fund for students injured during the incident, starting with $50,000. It wasn't enough to cover everything, but it was more than we expected. Friday morning, Courtney's mom called crying because the district's insurance had approved covering Courtney's new treatment plan, including weekly appointments with a kidney specialist. The insurance company apparently decided covering treatment was cheaper than a potential lawsuit for failing to protect students. Courtney would still need medications forever, but at least she could afford them now. That afternoon, Connor texted our group that he was meeting with a recruiter from the local junior college about their football program. The recruiter had reached out after seeing the news stories and wanted to offer Connor something even though he couldn't play anymore. Connor's dad drove him to the meeting where they offered him a position as assistant defensive coach while taking classes with a partial scholarship. It wasn't playing for state, but Connor could still be part of football and get an education. He accepted immediately and posted about it online, thanking everyone for their support. Meanwhile, the state education department had been investigating Hartley's credentials after receiving our evidence package. Monday, they announced he was permanently added to their substitute teaching ban list, meaning he couldn't teach in any public school in the state. The determination letter cited demonstrated pattern of violence and endangerment of students as the reason. Malcolm filed our official civil lawsuit Tuesday morning with the court clerk, naming Hartley, the school district, and Preston Academy as defendants. The case sought damages for medical costs, pain and suffering, and punitive damages for gross negligence in hiring. Court dates were set for spring, which meant months of depositions and discovery, but Malcolm said our evidence was strong. He warned us Hartley's lawyer would try to make us look bad, but we were ready for that fight. 2 weeks later, Michelle called with amazing news that she had won a state journalism award for her series on institutional failures protecting dangerous teachers. The award ceremony was next month, and she wanted us to attend as her guests since we made the story possible. She kept saying we showed incredible courage, but honestly, she was the one who made people actually listen, instead of dismissing us as dramatic teenagers. The award came with a $5,000 prize that Michelle immediately donated to Courtney's medical fund, which made Courtney cry when she found out. Preston Academy had gone completely silent, refusing all media requests and keeping their gates locked to visitors. We heard from parents there that multiple families had withdrawn their kids, and several major donors had pulled funding. The board was meeting weekly in emergency sessions trying to figure out damage control while their lawyers dealt with our civil suit. 3 nights later, I sat at my desk staring at all our evidence spread out and felt something shift inside me. We'd been so focused on destroying Hartley, but looking at Courtney's medical bills and Connor's surgery photos made me realize that wasn't even possible. You can't destroy someone who's already broken enough to hurt kids. The real fight was making sure he never got another classroom. I texted the group suggesting we push for statewide policy changes instead of just going after one man. Everyone agreed immediately because they were exhausted from the personal attacks, but still wanted change. Blake called me the next morning saying he'd written up everything about Hartley's military incidents in a sworn statement for Malcolm's civil case. He described 2 separate times Hartley lost control overseas, including hitting a private who questioned orders and threatening a medic with a knife during a PTSD episode. Blake said having a veteran on our side would change how people saw us, because it proved we weren't against the military, just against people using service as an excuse for violence. He drove over that afternoon to sign the papers in front of a notary at Malcolm's office. The affidavit was 12 pages detailing dates, witnesses, and how the military quietly discharged Hartley instead of court-martialing him to avoid scandal. Malcolm said this was exactly what we needed to show a pattern going back years. Preston Academy's emergency board meeting happened that Wednesday night, and parents packed the room demanding answers. One dad stood up holding printed copies of Michelle's articles asking how they could keep a teacher who threw a diabetic student's insulin out a window. The board members kept looking at their lawyers who kept shaking their heads every time someone tried to defend Hartley. After 3 hours of parents threatening to pull their kids and donors saying they'd withdraw funding, the board voted 7-2 to terminate Hartley's contract immediately. We watched the live stream from Sarah's house cheering when the vote came through. Hartley showed up at the school the next day screaming about wrongful termination and threatening to sue everyone, but Preston's lawyers met him at the gate with our evidence package. He left after 20 minutes of yelling, but we knew he'd try something else because guys like him never just accept consequences. The online harassment had been getting quieter as new scandals took over social media's attention span. We still checked our privacy settings daily and walked in groups, but the death threats stopped coming after a viral video of a senator's affair pushed us out of the headlines. Malcolm reminded us to keep documenting everything just in case, but said this was normal for these situations. People move on to the next outrage while you're still living with what happened. That Friday, the school board president called a press conference where he formally apologized for the district's failure to protect students. He announced new substitute screening procedures requiring full background checks, reference verification from previous schools, and mandatory training on classroom management without physical contact. Every sub would now need approval from 3 administrators instead of just one emergency hire by whoever was desperate. The reporters asked if this was admission of liability, but the district lawyer stepped in saying it was about moving forward, not assigning blame. We watched from the back of the room, trying not to roll our eyes at the corporate speak. 2 weeks later, Liam got a check for $212 for his destroyed textbook plus incidental damages, which basically meant they threw in extra money to make him go away. Sarah's phone reimbursement was $1,400 because her dad had kept the receipt and warranty information. The checks came with letters saying this was not admission of wrongdoing, just good faith gestures to affected students. Liam wanted to frame his check instead of cashing it as a reminder of what 1 page of paper cost us in trauma. Every Thursday at 4, we met in Amy's office for group therapy, which the district was paying for as part of their damage control. She had us do exercises about processing trauma and taught us breathing techniques for panic attacks that actually worked sometimes. Connor would talk about learning to coach instead of play, and how he was finding new purpose even though it hurt watching practice from the sidelines. Courtney shared her weekly medical updates and how her new treatment plan was helping stabilize her blood sugar, though her kidneys would never fully recover. Katie usually just listened, but sometimes she'd share how guilty she felt for not doing more to help Courtney that day. Jake had rejoined our group after his parents saw the board's apology and realized we'd been right all along. Amy never pushed us to forgive or forget, just to process and find ways to move forward without letting anger eat us alive. She said trauma doesn't follow a timeline and healing isn't linear, which felt more honest than other adults telling us we'd get over it. 3 months after everything started, I could finally sleep through most nights without waking up gasping from nightmares about burning flags and Connor's blood. Courtney's treatment plan had stabilized enough that she only needed the specialist monthly instead of weekly, though she'd be on medications forever. We hadn't destroyed Hartley, but we'd stopped him from teaching, and that had to be enough because anything more would have destroyed us too. That's my side of things. Now I want to know how you'd handle it, because your takes are always the best part. Drop a comment below and let's see all the different perspectives. I'll be reading through them.